MCTs are pretty cool. They basically go straight from the gut into the liver, converted to ketone bodies, and that's sort of where the magic happens, right? Ketone bodies are super interesting. They can be used by the brain and central nervous system, which other fats can't, and they can be used pretty much by all tissue throughout the body. So basically what we're getting is an extremely usable fuel, very quick fuel, that avoids a lot of the problems that many people nowadays have with a diet that's excessive in carbohydrates. You know, we have too high a blood sugar level that creates damage throughout the body. When we've got ketones to use, they don't create that damage, plus they're directly anti-inflammatory. You know, a lot of people nowadays suffer from autoimmune inflammatory conditions. They're directly anti-inflammatory. And probably one of the coolest things is they actually relax the brain as well. So you can almost think about them as being an anti-caffeine that doesn't slow you down or make you sleepy. They're giving you fuel, but it's relaxing for the brain, and a lot of people have problems with that overexcitatory nature of their brain. I was able to go off into clinical practice and really start to work, probably the first practitioner in Australasia to really start to work with low carb and ketogenic diets all those years ago. So since then, I've worked with Commonwealth and Olympic athletes, professional and elite athletes, and also a lot of people with chronic health conditions, ranging from autoimmune inflammatory conditions, the morbidly obese, and now particularly a lot of my patients are terminal cancer patients and people with cardiovascular disease. So really it runs the gamut. And my primary role now is as a researcher, as an educator. My doctoral research focuses on that carb-appropriate idea and ketogenic diets. Yeah. And my master's degree was actually in MCTs. So
oh my goodness.
I think I'm probably uniquely qualified to talk about this.
That's incredible. Okay.
They basically help the body to use fat more effectively for fuel at a baseline. They also encourage the creation of ketone bodies in the body. And those ketone bodies can be used as fuel by the brain, by the body. They're directly anti-inflammatory, so they can help reduce autoimmune and inflammatory conditions. And their real benefit is in terms of mental clarity, cognition, mental performance. So there's a lot of benefits, and I think most people would benefit from taking MCTs. That MCT coffee is really taking off, and I think that's because it gives people that mental clarity and that big mental boost straight up, you know, with their coffee. But there's lots of other ways you can take it as well. I mean, you can use it as the base for a salad dressing. It's got virtually no taste, so it's a very good addition to salads, to vegetables. You can chuck it in smoothies, or if you're wanting to take it in a hot beverage later on in the day, so you're not, you know, being woken up all night, you can have it with cocoa or any other sort of hot beverage as well. Being in practice for 20 odd years and working with low carb and ketogenic diets over that whole time, I mean, MCTs have been around for a long time, but people haven't really picked up on them just yet. And that surprises me because there's so much research showing the benefits. I think they can be applied first and foremost to those ketogenic diets really effectively, to low carb diets, but also to other real food based diets that maybe aren't low carb, because people are still going to get those benefits for fueling the body, fueling the brain, feeling better, thinking clearer. When you're involved in the research and you've read every single paper that's been published on MCTs, you can see obviously all of those benefits you might experience, right? For me, the biggest thing is mental clarity, cognition, because I do so much writing, I do so much speaking, I do so much in terms of just having my head in a computer and reading through complicated papers. Not to mention I've taken a few hits to the head playing footy, so anything that's going to help with that mental clarity is, you know, massive for me. When people talk about ketones, they're talking about a ketogenic diet, right? So you've got to be very restrictive on your carbohydrates, you've got to eat a very high-fat diet. But way back in the 1970s, there was a bunch of researchers who found that by supplementing with MCTs, people could get into a ketogenic diet and get into the state of ketosis with far lower amounts of fat. So they could eat more protein, they could eat more carbohydrate, and they still had the usable ketones for their brain to use. Even though if you're not on a low-carb diet, and this is where my research really fits. Now, if your carbohydrate intake is appropriate for you, you know, you're lean, you're feeling good, your bloods are looking great, then MCTs are going to benefit you anyway. because you can still use those ketone fuels. This is a common myth that we have, that you've got to be either fully keto or not, right? But what we've seen, and this is probably of interest to a lot of people here, in 20 years in clinical practice, testing the blood ketone levels of literally thousands of people, I've seen when people follow a carb-appropriate diet that's based on natural, whole lump processed foods, their ketone levels are just that little bit higher anyway. And that's not a bad thing, because your brain and central nervous system can use that. And so you're getting basically a readily usable, clean burning fuel. The research is really compelling with MCTs. I think it's such an amazing supplement, and I'm biased because I did my research in it, but in going through that whole process and reading basically every piece of published literature on MCTs, I think it's one of those supplements that is so beneficial for so many people, and we're not anywhere close to experiencing all of the benefits for all of our patients and clients that we could get.